The Great Hall of the Galactic Concord was older than most civilizations. Its walls were made of black stone pulled from dead stars. Its ceiling showed the real-time position of every known galaxy. 4,000 species had seats here, and for 10,000 years they had gathered to keep the peace. Keeper was older than the hall itself. His body was like a tree made of crystal, and light moved through him like slow blood. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched species evolve and go extinct. He had been present when the founding laws were first carved into the black stone at the center of the assembly. Today, he was teaching the newcomers. The Dominion had arrived from the far edges of the galaxy. They were creatures, tall and sharp, with bodies like black armor and eyes like red flames. They moved in perfect formation, clicking and hissing to each other. Their high commander stood at the front. He was larger than the others, and his mandibles were stained with the blood of his enemies. He had conquered 40 worlds. He feared nothing. Began his speech. He explained the laws of trade, the laws of territory, the laws of war. They listened with obvious boredom. These were simple rules, the kind every empire understood. Take what you can hold. Kill what threatens you. Grow or die. Then reached the first law. The old keeper's light dimmed. His voice, which had been calm and steady, became heavy with something like grief. The first law is not like the others, he said. It was written before the conquered existed. It was written in the aftermath of something terrible. Every species that joins us must learn this law before all others. It is carved here in every known language, including your own. He gestured to the black stone in the center of the hall. They turned to look. The words were indeed there, glowing faintly in their script. Do not provoke the humans. Do not corner them. Do not threaten their young. Do not mistake their kindness for weakness. This is not a warning. It is a mercy. Made a sound that might have been a laugh. It was a terrible noise, like bones breaking. Humans, he said, the soft ones, the ones who live barely 100 years and breed slowly, the ones who smile at everyone and keep small animals as companions. He turned to his officers and they clicked their amusement. This is the great threat of the galaxy. This is what we must fear. Did not react to the mockery. He had heard it before, many times from many species. Most of them no longer existed. Commander, he said quietly, I understand your confusion. The humans do not look dangerous. They are small. They are fragile. They form bonds with other species easily, sometimes even with their food animals. They laugh often and cry easily. They create art and music for no practical purpose. They seem, to a warrior culture like yours, to be weak. They are weak, said flatly. No, replied. They have chosen to be gentle. There is a difference. The keeper moved closer to the delegation. His crystal body caught the light from 1,000 distant stars. Let me tell you about the humans, he said. They evolved on a world that was trying to kill them. Their planet had extreme temperatures, constant natural disasters, and predators in every environment. Most species, facing such conditions, either adapt to one environment or die. The humans adapted to all of them. They spread across their entire world. They survived ice ages and plagues and floods. They killed every predator that threatened them, including each other. His red eyes flickered with something like interest. For most of their history, continued, humans were at war, with nature, with animals, with themselves. They developed weapons of terrible power. They created bombs that could destroy entire cities in a single flash. They built machines that could kill millions. They came very close, several times, to wiping themselves out completely. Then they are self-destructive fools, said. No, said again. They learned. That is what makes them dangerous. They looked at what they had done, at what they were capable of doing, and they chose to change. They built systems to prevent war. They created laws to protect the weak. They reached out to the stars not as conquerors, but as explorers and traders. For the last 300 years, they have been the most peaceful species in the conquered. The old keeper paused. His light flickered. But they did not forget, Commander. They did not forget what they were. They did not forget what they can become. The violence is still there, buried deep, held back by choice and will, and the memory of what happens when they let it loose. stepped forward, his armored feet clicking on the ancient floor. "I have conquered 40 worlds," he said. "I have broken species that had claws and fangs and natural armor. I have defeated enemies with technology far beyond my own. And you expect me to fear creatures who keep small animals as friends, who cry at sad stories, who spend their resources helping species that are not their own?" Looked at the commander for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was very old and very tired. "Commander, I am 4,000 years old. I have seen more than you can imagine. And I tell you this truth. The reason they help other species, the reason they form bonds so easily, the reason they protect the weak, it is because they know what they are capable of when they stop caring. Their kindness is not weakness. It is a leash they have put on themselves. It is a choice they make every single day to be better than their nature." He turned away from The law was not written to protect the humans, Commander. It was written to protect everyone else. It was written by species who made the mistake you are about to make. Species who saw human kindness and thought it meant human weakness. Species who threatened human children and human homes and human friends. "And what happened to those species?" asked, his voice mocking. "Did not turn around." "I told you," he said quietly. "I have watched species go extinct." The delegation laughed as they left the assembly hall. They had come to the Concord to announce their expansion into new territory. They had found nothing but old fools clinging to ancient superstitions. 3 months later, they would attack a human colony called New Haven. And the galaxy would remember why the law was written. New Haven was not a rich colony. It had no rare minerals, no ancient technology, no military value. It was simply a place where people lived. The colony sat on a world called Elysium 7, a green planet with gentle weather and rich soil. 12,000 people called it home. Most of them were human, but not all. Traders had built a market district near the spaceport. Engineers maintained the power systems and taught their craft to anyone who wanted to learn. A small community of refugees had settled near the eastern farms, their blue skin bright against the golden wheat. The humans had welcomed them all. Maria had been the colony's administrator for 15 years. She was 63 years old with gray hair and laugh lines around her eyes. She had never fired a weapon in her life. Her job was to make sure the water systems worked, the schools had enough teachers, and the harvest shipments left on time. She was good at it. On the morning they arrived, she was reviewing applications for a new medical clinic. The alert came at 9:47 local time. Unknown ships entering the system, military configuration, no response to communication attempts. Maria set down her coffee and walked to the communication center. By the time she arrived, the colony's small garrison had already assembled. 42 peacekeepers with light weapons. They were trained for emergencies, fires, accidents, the occasional dispute between neighbors. They were not soldiers. The fleet filled the sky. 17 warships, their black hulls blocking out the sun. The colony's sensors counted over 200 smaller attack craft. High Commander sent his message on all frequencies. "Inhabitants of this world, you have 1 hour to surrender your colony and present yourselves for processing. Your world now belongs to the Dominion. Resistance will result in immediate termination. Compliance will result in servitude. Choose." Maria listened to the message twice. Then she asked the communications officer to open a channel. "This is Maria, administrator of New Haven Colony. We are a civilian settlement. We have no military value. We have children here of many species. Whatever dispute you have with the human government, these people are not part of it, please. There is no reason for violence." His response was immediate. "You have 58 minutes. Maria closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, she looked at the people around her. The peacekeepers, the communication officers, the teachers who had come to see what was happening, the engineer who maintained the colony's shield generator. "Can we evacuate anyone?" she asked. "No," the engineer said. His name was, and he had lived in New Haven for 20 years. "They have already blocked the escape routes. Their ships are too fast. The shields. I can give you 7 hours, maybe 8 after that. He spread his 4 hands in a gesture of helplessness. Maria nodded slowly. She turned back to the communication panel and opened the channel again. This is Maria to the commander. I am giving you one chance. Turn around. Leave this system. Our children are here. Our families are here. This is our home. Leave now and no one needs to die. Laughed. The sound echoed through the communication center. You threaten me with what? Your farms, your schools. You have nothing, human. You are nothing. And after today, you will not even be a memory. He cut the connection. Maria looked at, raised the shields. The bombardment began exactly 1 hour after the first warning. They were punctual. The shield held for 7 hours and 23 minutes, worked without rest, rerouting power, patching failures, squeezing every second he could from the failing systems. When the generator finally exploded, it killed him instantly. He died still trying to give his neighbors more time. The ground forces descended in waves. They expected easy victory. They found something else. The peacekeepers fought with their light weapons until they ran out of power cells. Then they fought with whatever they could find. One of them, a young woman named Sarah, held for 40 minutes with nothing but a metal pipe. She killed 11 warriors before they finally brought her down. The farmers fought with tools. Old, 71 years old, bad knees, hands like leather from 50 years of working soil. He met thee at his property line with a harvesting blade. He had never been in a fight in his life. He killed 9 of them before they cut him down. His last words were a curse. The teachers barricaded the schools. They put their bodies between thee and the children. They did not beg. They did not run. They stood in the doorways and died there one after another, giving the children minutes, then seconds, then nothing at all. They fought beside the humans. So did the. This was their home too. These were their friends, their neighbors, the people who had welcomed them when no one else would. They died together, species that had nothing in common except the place they had chosen to call home. Maria was captured alive, wanted to make an example of her. He found her in the ruins of the medical clinic, carrying a child who had lost her parents. Maria's arm was broken. She was bleeding from a wound on her head. She had not tried to escape. "Why did you not run?" asked her. He was genuinely curious. Maria looked up at him with eyes that held no fear, only a terrible sadness. "Where would I go?" she said. "These are my people." They took 4,000 survivors as slaves. 8,000 had died, including 2,000 children of various species. The youngest was a human baby, 3 months old. The oldest was a grandmother who had been visiting her great. Ordered his communications officer to broadcast the victory on all channels. He wanted the galaxy to see what happened to those who the Dominion. He wanted them to understand that resistance was pointless. The message went out to every corner of civilized space. Every species saw the burning colony, the piled bodies, the weeping survivors being loaded onto slave ships. They saw standing in the ruins, his mandibles spread in triumph. "Let this be a lesson," he announced. "The Dominion cannot be stopped. The Dominion cannot be. Submit and you will serve. Resist and you will die." The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, other species watched and trembled. They were coming. They were unstoppable. But in human space, something else was happening. The messages stopped. The trading ships went silent. The diplomatic channels closed. The embassies emptied. For 3 days, no human spoke to anyone outside their own systems. Then on the 4th day, a single message was sent from Earth to the galactic conquered. It was short. "We are coming." And every species that had ever read the first law felt their blood run cold. Deep beneath the mountains of Earth, in tunnels that had been carved before humans reached the stars, there was a place called the repository. Here, preserved in crystal and code, was every war humanity had ever fought, every battle, every massacre, every terrible lesson learned in blood and fire. The current generation had never seen true war. They had been born into peace, raised in peace, taught that violence was a last resort and cooperation was the highest virtue. For 300 years, humanity had chosen kindness. They had built instead of destroyed. They had reached out instead of struck down. But they had never forgotten. President James stood in the repository for the first time in his life. He was 61 years old, a former teacher, a man who had spent his career building bridges between species. He had three. He liked gardening. He had never held a weapon. Now he stood surrounded by the ghosts of human history, and he understood why his ancestors had buried this place so deep. The screens around him showed footage from New Haven. The burning buildings, the bodies, the children, Maria, her arm broken, holding an orphan, the commander laughing. Watched it 3 times. Then he turned to the people gathered around him. "How long?" he asked. Admiral Sarah, no relation, stepped forward. She was the commander of the Human Defense Forces, a position that had been mostly ceremonial for 3 centuries. She was 80 years old. She had never fought a real battle. But she had trained for one every day of her life. 6 weeks to full mobilization, she said. If we call up the reserves and activate the emergency shipyards, we can cut that to 4. Do it in 3. She nodded and left. Turned to the next person. Doctor, grandson of the farmer who had died at New Haven, though he did not know it yet. He was the director of military intelligence, another position that had been almost ceremonial. "Tell me about those," said. Activated a holographic display. They control approximately 200 systems, military strength estimated at 8,000 warships. They have conquered 43 species in the last 2 centuries. Their tactics are straightforward, overwhelming force, followed by occupation and enslavement. Weaknesses. Arrogance, said immediately. They have never lost a war. They don't know how to lose. Their command structure is rigid, take out the leadership, and the followers become disorganized. Also, they fight for conquest and resources. They don't understand any other motivation. Nodded slowly, and our strength. Hesitated. Sir, we haven't fought a major war in 300 years. Our active military is just under 2 million. Our ships are primarily designed for exploration and cargo transport. We have defensive weapons, but... That wasn't my question, interrupted. What is our strength? The room was silent for a long moment. Then Admiral's voice came through the communication system. Mr. President, I've just activated the emergency call-up. We've had responses from every human system, every single one. Numbers. In the first hour, we had 30 million volunteers. The number is still climbing. Closed his eyes. 30 million people ready to fight, ready to die. For a colony most of them had never visited, for people most of them had never met, because those people had been their people, because those children had been their children. This was human strength, not weapons, not ships, not technology. This, 2 weeks later, addressed the United Human Confederacy. Every human in the galaxy watched. 300 years ago, he said, we chose peace. We looked at our history, the wars, the massacres, the centuries of blood, and we chose to be better. We reached out to the stars with open hands instead of closed fists. We made friends instead of enemies. We built instead of destroyed. We did this not because we forgot what we were, but because we remembered. We remembered what we could become. He paused. On the screens behind him, images of New Haven played, the farms, the schools, the children playing in the streets, human and all together. Then the attack, the burning, the bodies. The Dominion has taken our children, continued. They have killed our people and the people under our protection. They did this because they thought we were weak. They saw our kindness and mistook it for surrender. They saw our patience and mistook it for fear. They saw our mercy and mistook it for inability. His voice hardened. They were wrong. Across human space, shipyards that had built cargo vessels for decades began producing warships. Factories that had made farming equipment switched to weapons. Scientists who had spent their careers studying peaceful technology began designing instruments of destruction. And the people came. They came from every colony, every station, every ship. Old veterans who had trained for wars they thought would never come. Young people who had never held a weapon but were willing to learn. Teachers, farmers, doctors, artists, ordinary people who had lived ordinary lives, now ready to become something else. The Galactic Conquered watched in growing horror. They are mobilizing faster than any species in recorded history, one ambassador reported. Their production capacity has increased by 800% in 2 weeks. They are training civilians at a rate we cannot even measure. How is this possible? Another asked. They have been at peace for 3 centuries. How can they prepare for war so quickly? Keeper answered. His voice was very tired. Because they never stopped preparing. They trained their people constantly, even in peacetime. They updated their weapons systems, their tactics, their strategies. They maintained their shipyards and their factories. They did all of this quietly, without announcement, without threat. They did it because they remembered what they were. He turned to face the assembled ambassadors. We thought they had changed. We thought 300 years of peace had made them soft. We were wrong. They did not become peaceful because they could not fight. They became peaceful because they chose not to, and now they are choosing again. The Conquered sent a delegation to the, begging them to return the New Haven survivors, begging them to apologize, begging them to do anything to stop what was coming. High Commander refused. Let them come, he said. We will crush them as we have crushed all others. 3 weeks after the attack on New Haven, the human fleet began to move. 50 million soldiers, 12,000 warships, more joining every day. And on every hull, painted in white letters, the names of the dead. The flagship was called the 2,000 Children. The war had begun. They had prepared for war. They had gathered their fleet at Nexus Point, a military staging area at the heart of their territory. 4,000 warships, the largest force they had ever assembled. They had conquered 40 worlds with less. High Commander stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching the stars. Intelligence reports suggested the humans might send 500 ships, perhaps 1,000. A significant force, but nothing they could not handle. They had superior numbers, superior firepower, superior experience. The humans were soft, everyone knew this, they would break. The first ships emerged from hyperspace at exactly noon local time. Watched his sensors with amusement as the human vessels appeared. 100, 200, 500. Then the amusement faded. 1,000, 2,000, 5,000. The human fleet kept coming. Ship after ship after ship, pouring out of hyperspace in waves, filling the void around Nexus Point with steel and fire. 8,000, 10,000, 12,000. When the last ship emerged, the fleet was outnumbered 3-1. Stared at his display in disbelief. This was impossible. The humans did not have this many warships. They had been at peace for 3 centuries. Where had these vessels come from? But it was not the numbers that broke morale. It was the names. Every human ship bore a name painted in white letters on its hull. The Maria, the Little Sun Preschool, the Market, the Engineering Hall, names of people who had died, names of places that had burned, names of children. And at the head of the fleet, larger than any other vessel, the human flagship, the 2,000 Children. Admiral opened a communication channel. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. This is Admiral Sarah of the United Human Confederacy. You have committed crimes against humanity and against our friends. You have killed our children. You have enslaved our people. We have come to correct this error. Found his voice. You are outnumbered in experience, human. We have fought 100 wars. You have fought none. Your fleet will burn and your worlds will follow. We have fought more wars than you can count, replied. We have simply been fighting them against ourselves, until now. The battle began. They expected the humans to be cautious. They expected careful tactics, defensive formations, the hesitant movements of a species unused to war. They were wrong. The human fleet attacked with a ferocity that comprehension. Ships threw themselves into the heart of the formation, sacrificing themselves to create openings for others. Pilots flew their vessels directly into enemy weapons platforms, ejecting at the last second, or not ejecting at all. Ground assault teams boarded ships and fought hand-to-hand in corridors filled with smoke and blood. They did not understand. These humans were not fighting for territory. They were not fighting for resources. They were not fighting to survive. They were fighting for something else, something they had never encountered. Captain Al, commanding a destroyer, watched in horror as a human cruiser, badly damaged, engines failing, turned directly toward his ship. "They are on a collision course," his sensor officer reported, voice trembling. "They will turn away," Al said. "They must turn away." The human cruiser did not turn away. In the final seconds, Al opened a communication channel. "Human vessel, you will be destroyed. Turn away." A human voice answered, a young voice calm despite everything. "My sister was on New Haven. She was 7 years old. Her name was Emma. I am coming to collect the debt." The cruiser struck the destroyer at full speed. Both ships vanished in a ball of fire. This scene repeated across the battlefield. Humans did not surrender. Humans did not retreat. Humans did not stop. They took wounds that should have killed them and kept fighting. They lost limbs and kept fighting. They watched their friends die and kept fighting. One commander, captured after his ship was boarded, asked his human captor how this was possible. How could they endure so much pain? How could they keep going when all logic said they should stop? The human, a Marine sergeant named Torres, who had lost his left arm in the fighting and had it roughly bandaged with ship tape, looked at them with eyes that held no hatred, only a terrible emptiness. "You killed our kids," he said simply. "You put it on video, you were proud of it." He walked away. He had more fighting to do. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the fleet had been reduced to less than a third of its original strength. The survivors fled, scattering in every direction, abandoning Nexus Point to the humans. Ordered a retreat to the secondary staging area 3 systems away. He would regroup. He would gather more ships. He would. The humans followed. They pursued the across 3 systems, through asteroid fields and nebulae, past abandoned colonies and space stations. They did not stop to rest. They did not stop to repair. They did not accept surrender from any commander. Admiral was asked about this by her subordinates. The humans had always been merciful. They had always accepted surrender. Why were they different now? Looked at the names painted on her flagship. 2,000 names, 2,000 children. "Because they surrendered nothing," she said. "Those people at New Haven surrendered. They had no weapons. They posed no threat. And they killed them anyway. They killed children and called it a lesson." She turned back to her command display. "We are teaching a different lesson now." The pursuit ended at the secondary staging area, where had gathered the remainder of his forces. Another 1,000 ships pulled from garrison duties across the Dominion. He prepared for a final stand. The human fleet arrived and simply waited. For 3 days they held position at the edge of the system. They did not attack. They did not communicate. They just waited. Did not understand. What were they doing? What were they planning? On the 3rd day, he got his answer. More human ships arrived. And more. And more. The fleet that had seemed overwhelming at Nexus Point doubled, then tripled in size. Ships kept coming from every human system, every colony, every station. Civilians who had converted cargo vessels into weapons platforms. Mining ships fitted with military-grade weapons. Research vessels carrying prototype weapons that had never been tested in combat. 35,000 human ships now surrounded the position. Admiral finally opened a channel. "High Commander, you have a choice. Surrender your forces and return every slave you have ever taken, not just from New Haven but from every world you have conquered. Release them all, and your soldiers will live to see their homes again." Stared at the overwhelming force around him. For the first time in his life, he felt something he did not recognize. Fear. And if I refuse, he asked. His voice did not change. Then we will take them back ourselves, and you will learn what happens when humans stop choosing to be kind. The forces surrendered 6 hours later. But the war was not over, not yet. The human fleet turned toward The human fleet arrived on a clear day. The planet's 2 suns shone down on cities that had stood for 10,000 years, on hives that held billions on hatcheries where the next generation waited to be born. They looked up at the sky and saw death. 40,000 human warships hung above their world. Each ship carried enough firepower to devastate a continent. Together, they could reduce the planet to ash in hours. They had no fleet left to oppose them, no allies to call upon, nothing but their cities and their children and their fear. They waited for the bombardment to begin. It did not come. Instead, a single shuttle descended from the human flagship. It was small and unarmed, painted white, carrying no weapons of any kind. It landed on the steps of the Imperial Palace in the heart of the capital. The door opened. President James stepped out. He was alone. No guards, no weapons, no armor, just an old man in a simple suit walking through streets filled with creatures that could kill him with a single blow. They watched him pass. They did not attack. They were too stunned to attack. This made no sense. Humans were supposed to be weak, emotional, easy to break. But this human walked among them as if he had already won everything and had nothing left to fear. Perhaps he had. Climbed the steps of the Imperial Palace. The doors opened before him. He walked through halls decorated with the trophies of 1,000 conquered worlds, past guards who stood frozen in confusion, into the throne room of Empress herself. She was ancient by standards, her carapace dulled with age, her eyes still sharp with intelligence. She had ruled for 300 years. She had overseen the conquest of dozens of worlds. She had given birth to generations of warriors. Had been her son. Stopped before her throne. For a long moment neither spoke. You could destroy us, the Empress said finally. Your fleet has the power, why do you not use it? Looked at her with eyes that held exhaustion, grief, and something else. Something she did not understand. Because destruction is easy, he said. Any species can destroy, the destroyed. We could destroy in return. We could glass your world, burn your hatcheries, end your species forever. Our people would cheer. Our dead would be avenged. He paused. And then we would have to live with what we had done. The Empress studied him. You speak of restraint as if it is strength. It is the only strength that matters, replied. My species has learned this lesson many times, and we have learned it in blood. We have committed atrocities that would make your conquests look gentle. We have murdered millions of our own kind over differences of religion, of skin color, of imaginary lines drawn on maps. We have looked into the abyss of what we are capable of, and we have chosen, every generation, every day, to step back from the edge. He stepped closer to the throne. Your son killed our children. He killed children of other species under our protection. He broadcasted across the galaxy as a lesson in power. And now I stand here, with the power to end everything you have ever built, and I am offering you a choice. What choice? The Empress asked. Listed his terms. Every slave from New Haven would be returned. Every slave from every world that had conquered would be released. The military would be reduced to defensive forces only, and the other architects of the New Haven attack would stand trial for their crimes. They would pay reparations to rebuild what they had destroyed. And one more thing. Every child for the next 10 generations will be taught what happened here. They will learn about New Haven. They will learn about the people who died there, humans and. They will learn about a colony that welcomed strangers and paid for its kindness with death. And they will learn why the humans came, and why we did not do to you what you did to them. The Empress was silent for a long time. And if I refuse, she asked. Did not blink. Then we will blockade your world, we will wait. We will starve your people into submission if necessary. We have time. We are very, very patient when we need to be." The Empress looked past him, toward the windows, toward the sky filled with human ships. "You could have vengeance," she said. "Your people would support it. Why choose this instead?" Thought of New Haven, of Maria carrying a child through the ruins with a broken arm, of farmers fighting with harvesting tools, of teachers dying in doorways, of 2,000 children whose names were painted on the hulls of his ships. "Because they would not want us to become you," he said. "The people who died at New Haven, they were not warriors. They were not killers. They were farmers and teachers and parents. They welcomed strangers. They protected children who were not their own. They died trying to save others." His voice broke slightly, then steadied. "If we destroy your species, we dishonor their memory. We prove that we are no better than you. We prove that the only response to violence is more violence forever, until nothing is left. They deserved better than that. Their deaths have to mean something more than just another species wiped from the galaxy." The Empress accepted the terms. She had no choice, but as she made her mark on the agreement, she asked one final question. "Your people will remember this moment. Will they understand why you showed mercy, or will they think you were weak?" Smiled. It was a tired smile, heavy with the weight of everything that had happened. "My people will argue about this for centuries," he said. "Some will say I should have destroyed you. Some will say I was right. We are very good at arguing with ourselves. But in the end, they will remember that we had the power to end a species, and we chose not to. They will remember that our rage was not stronger than our principles. And maybe, 100 years from now, some child will look up at the stars and be grateful that humans chose to be better than their worst impulses." He turned to leave. At the door he paused. "Teach your children well, Empress. Teach them about New Haven. Teach them what we could have done. And teach them why we didn't do it. Because the next species that threatens our children may not face humans who still remember why mercy matters." 50 years later, an elder stood in a classroom. His students were young, their carapaces still soft, their eyes bright with curiosity. On the wall behind him hung a faded image, a human woman with gray hair and laugh lines, surrounded by children of 6 different species. "This was Maria," he said. "She was the administrator of a colony called New Haven. 50 years ago, our people attacked that colony. We killed 8,000 people, including 2,000 children. We did this because we thought humans were weak. We thought kindness was weakness." He paused. The room was very quiet. "The humans came for us with a fleet that darkened our sky. They could have destroyed us. They could have ended our species forever. No one would have blamed them. We had killed their children. We had earned extinction." He turned to the image of Maria. "But they did not destroy us. They demanded justice, not vengeance. They asked us to remember, not to die. They showed us mercy when we deserved none, because they believed that ending us would make them less than what they wanted to be." Outside the window, a human cargo ship passed overhead. It was delivering supplies for the annual Remembrance Festival, when humans and a dozen other species gathered to honor the dead of New Haven. Today, we remember Maria and the 2,000 children. We remember the farmers who fought with tools and the teachers who died in doorways. We remember what our ancestors did, and we remember what the humans chose not to do in return. He looked at his students. "Learn this lesson well. The oldest law in the galaxy says do not provoke humans. Now you understand why. Not because they will destroy you, but because if you force them to become destroyers, they will never forgive you for it, and neither will history." The lesson continued. In the galactic Concord, the first law still stood carved in black stone, but now everyone understood its meaning. It was not a warning about human strength. It was not a warning about human vengeance. It was a warning about human choice, about a species that could be the kindest friends or the most terrible enemies, and no one could ever predict which they would choose until the moment arrived. The galaxy remembered New Haven. The galaxy remembered the mercy that followed. And no one ever provoked the humans again.